Yeah.
I've talked to really tough men who've been brought to their knees with a micromanager. It's very subtle. It chips away at you.
Yeah.
Days is going to get worse because you have the old guard of the older Gen X and boomers, and you have the younger Gen Zs coming in, and there's such a difference in upbringing. And so bring these two together, and you get like real conflicts. To fly over from somewhere and then hire me for the whole day. There's something so very dodgy about it. It's like, yeah, sure, if you want to call it coaching. Like it was all red flags, and I just started out, and then like there's so many things that you need to be aware of as women in the industry as well.
Love listening to Tech Tales? Be sure to smash that subscribe button so you never miss a seaworthy story, fascinating insight or incredible behind the scenes moment. Climb aboard, stay shipshape and catch every episode fresh off the boat the second it drops. Ahoy ahoy to all you smooth sailors out there and welcome aboard the Deck Tales podcast. I'm your host and captain Sammy Catlin, and this is where we dive headfirst into life at sea. From stunning destinations to unexpected storms, our guests have stories that will make you laugh, gasp, and maybe even shed a tear. Whether you're a seasoned sea dog or simply curious about life on board, Deck Tales is your boarding pass to a world of nautical narratives. My guest today is the lovely Tineke Zoet. Where do I begin? She sailed with the Dutch Merchant Navy and worked on cruise ships, battled burnout, dodged toxic bosses, and came back with a mission. From Dutch engineer to maritime mindset coach, Tineke helps seafarers navigate the one thing no simulator can teach: people. If you've ever worked at sea, struggled with leadership, hierarchy, bullying, harassment in the workplace, or you just wondered what really goes on below deck, this one's for you. So let's anchor up and dive right in. Hello, Tineke.
Hi, hello. Hi, Sam.
How are you, my dear? It's 2 o'clock.
Good. Yeah.
Got your tea, got your coffee. We're ready to go. Whereabouts are you, my dear? You're in Scotland.
I am in Scotland. I'm in Glasgow.
Are you born Glaswegian?
No, I'm born Dutch. I'm coming from the Netherlands.
Yes.
So yeah, I didn't recognize my Glaswegian accent there here, but I live here now for about 16 years.
So the accent is kind of almost one with itself.
Yes, it's sort of people from my family says I do have a slight accent coming back, but like or words or I think in English mainly. But then when I spend a lot of time in the Netherlands and I come back, I sort of have to reverse that again because then it's funny. But I have a daughter who's very Glaswegian.
Whereabouts in the Netherlands did you say? Or did you say you were from a place in the Netherlands or not? Whereabouts?
Yeah, I'm from the Netherlands, from Middelburg, so that's like quite close to Antwerp. So we're from down South Zealand.
Okay.
Very maritime orientated.
Well, so you're not in the maritime industry specifically, but you work adjacent to it these days. Is that correct?
Yeah, I am a maritime workplace coach. So not exclusively for the maritime industry. I'm a workplace coach, so I do attract other industries as well or other clients. But I mainly focus on the maritime industry because it's where I'm from, is where I'm mainly working, have my contacts in, have been worked in. So it's more obvious for me that I have that passion to help crew on board and people who facilitate towards crew and to help them work better together as a team, because it's such a unique industry and it's so different than from other industries, even from automation, aviation or automation, because of you're spending so long on board with other people, and even for people on shore.
That's interesting.
It's for them as well.
Has anybody ever come to you for assistance and you've almost kind of like given them a case study as an example to help them feel better about their own situation because it's not something that happened at sea?
Yes. I can imagine I would have done that, yes, because I often speak from either of my own experience or from clients that came to me. There's some of the worst cases, for example, or toxic work environment happened on the shore, which is funny, or it happened with female bosses from clients I have, and not with the men on board at all. So you have all these stereotypes, and then something happens that's far worse, because women amongst each other can be really vile. And then I do work with a male-dominated environment, so I often work with female leaders working against like hierarchical male leaders. So it's like sometimes you want to say like, at least it's not like you'll be happy it's a man because they're quite straightforward. You can have a really bad manager but still be very good personally, and women don't do that. It's you can't, they have no boundaries in that. If they're not a very good manager to you, you cannot mostly cooperate well together as a person either.
Yeah, I hear that. That's interesting you say. So you did how many years working on actual ships and how many years now in therapy?
Oh, gosh. Well, I worked about 6 years at sea. I work now 8 years as a coach. And then all in between is the maritime industry, almost.
In between? So what was that? Shore-based jobs? You've got quite a
CV. And my first job, my first shoreside job was working for a shipping company, did vessel planning, vessel coordinating, think about container planning. Somebody needs to do that on the shore and then make sure the logistics are correctly done. I did that for a while. I've been sales engineer. I've worked as an e-learning project leader for developing e-learning for seafarers as well, and authoring the courses in like bullying and harassment, resilience, cultural courses for a ship management company here in Glasgow. I like that very much. I did my degree later in life in my early 30s at a university for an MPhil. I studied human factors for shipping as well and worked for them at the same time. So I did a lot of different things. But saying that as well, I did also work for a luxury rug store and did my interior styling education in 2 years in between because I thought I'd had enough. I have enough. I'm leaving. Bye. So I
have to say, Tineke, when I came across your profile and I saw that you were affiliated with, mental health charities and, coaching for people that were struggling, and I found you and I looked at your profile and your website and everything. And then when you wrote back to me and gave me a bit of information about your career, I was like, woof. Like I was struggling to figure out which questions to ask you because because of the trajectory and just how varied all of your sort of experiences have been working at sea. So it was a struggle at first, but we've got a couple of questions to go through today, which we've narrowed down from a longer list.
It's hard, isn't it? But I want to say something about that because that's also the reason I became a coach, because it looks varied, but it was relatively short period of time. I've been always very ambitious and very a free spirit, as so-called, and I never found my thing. I always attracted narcissistic leaders and toxic workplaces, and if I felt unhappy, I quit, and I had a pattern in that. So it looks varied, but I never really found a place where I belonged or felt confident enough to do a job properly, or didn't see any progress made. So at some point it stopped, and I did find my thing when I was working in human factors because I found a passion in there, and I also realized it was up to me it was not the workplace at all. It was also part of my own behavior and taking accountability for what kind of people I attracted in my life and what kind of bosses and managers. So it was going from the victim mentality to like, I'm going to sort out my own career. So that was a really big, important turning point in my life.
And so as a one-to-one coach in the mental health space, are you working remotely over the Zoom? Are you doing it in person, or a mix of everything?
Mix of everything, mostly internationally, people from all over on Zoom calls, but the power always lies in personal interviews and sit down with somebody and really take the time and energy to see them in real life. But I don't always have that luxury. If I can, I will recommend it, definitely going in.
Well, of course, I've been doing this for a couple of years now, and it's all been over Zoom. And obviously, I'm not, offering people the chance to unburden themselves in in the same way that you would be, shedding their sort of demons, if you like, try to air out the dirty laundry, and try to get some sort of sense of what's been going on upstairs. I think of this show as a soundboard for seafarers and people from the maritime industry from all different sectors, and it's kind of like a lucky dip. You never know one week to the next what kind of personality would be sharing their side of things. And I think because I had a conversation with Captain Sam's recently, he was sharing me a statistic about how one of the sad things is that in 2024, I think he said, the number of crew suicides surpassed the number of crew fatalities at sea. So it's as much a drain mentally as it is physically, and then some. And so it was only after when I was editing that episode and I was trying to find some more information to kind of slap up on the screen to accompany his words, that I came across your name. And I thought, yeah, that would be a good one to reach out to. And you're here. You're on the podcast.
I'm honoured. I'm honoured. You have so many fantastic people around. Also, with I forgot his name, but talking about whales, and honestly, feel like what can I do?
Captain Ted.
Not as important as that.
No, Tineke. It's like I said, it's lucky dip. So it's definitely not about who had the more traumatizing story or heroic story of amazing deeds that they overcame or whatever. It's everything and anything relating to the sea. And I think yours is as valid as anybody's, if not more, because you're dealing with the fallout as much as anything, right? So people can have all these experiences, but then it's how do you unwrap everything that's happened? Because I remember when I'd finished doing 4 years at sea, going back home, going back to sea, going back home, going back to sea, it was constantly like, so what are you going to do after you've had this time of, entertaining yourself?
Exactly.
Right? This isn't a real job. This is just something you're doing to kind of eat, pray, love. You'll find yourself, right? But then you're going to come back and you're going to join in with society. And so what are you doing with yourself? It always kind of felt like, well, I am working an awful lot just to come back home and to kind of be made to feel like this is not real work. Exactly. And it was like, well, I might not be a career man at, 18, 19 when I started, but I'm finding my feet and I'm being made to feel like in between contracts, I'm just on a jolly old knees up. And, I did a lot of different types of jobs when I came back. And I finally got to the point where I washed my hands of the industry. It wasn't until many years later when I decided to write about my experiences that I was unpacking things for myself. And that was really cathartic. And I recommend anyone to do something like that, just as an exercise in helping them to not only remember the fond times, but the bad times and how you coped with it at the time. And that can be, I think, really rewarding in itself.
It's such a perfect example. I do feel that as well. That is exactly spot on. It's hard. Similar? Yeah. Well, you have like when you're spend time in between. I had a lucky experience that I had at the time. I had a boyfriend that was also a seafarer, and we were the agency we worked for was in pain having us both schedule times together on separate vessels. I don't think he minded that we quit because then you have 4 months sailing, 2 months off, or 2 months sailing, 1 month off. And then in the time we were off, we always like, what do you do? And I got lots of comments like your life is like one big holiday for family and friends. Like when you're coming home, you don't really have, all they see this, you're a month off, you're 4 weeks or 8 weeks off, and they don't see the hardship that you carry on board without the weekends, without the overtimes, and you cannot sign up to a gym membership or anything because it's paid monthly, and most of the year you're not there. And most of the friends are working 8 to 5. So what do you do during the day? You can only do so many shopping trips, and then you had to sort of reinvent yourself for the time you were at home. And I struggled a bit with that. I felt like, this is like it's not really working very well. And you need it's as well to be trying to find that thing was quite hard. But it was fun as well at the same time. But yeah.
It's hard to grow some roots, yeah. But so what first drew you to a life at sea? You told me you were in the Merchant Navy, the Dutch Merchant Navy.
Yes, I was actually, I didn't want to be in the Merchant Navy. I wanted to be in the Marines. I wanted to be a pilot. I should watch Top Gun. I thought that was the coolest thing that I could imagine. And I wanted to travel. I wanted to do something out of the ordinary. And I felt a bit like stuck at home and, a bit bored. And I was bullied quite a lot at school as well. So I found in my head, I wanted to be something like the most coolest thing I could imagine was being with the Marines and then be a pilot or search and rescue helicopter pilot, first female. I saw headlines in the news and things. And that's sort of I've been into open days so many times, but my degrees at the secondary school with how it works in the Netherlands were not qualified enough for going into that education. It's a very strict education, and so I thought if I do anything other technical in that kind of area, and I did my research beforehand, then I can do that 4 years of study, and then I'll be submitted to the Marines. And I could choose from maybe, we didn't have any internet to research that. You have basically three types of educations and technical universities that will qualified. And I had a very good friend who worked at that, who already was a student at Nautical University there, so in the Netherlands. And I walked in for the open day and it was so cool. You have your radar set up, you have your bridge simulator, and we had the college right onto the sea. So it was on the boulevard and you saw the ships sailing past, and that was like the idea of that was really massive. So I signed up for that. But yeah, halfway through my education, I started having glasses, so that I never had a plan B. So the idea of going into the military as well didn't sit well with me once I started to mature a bit more. And then you have to follow orders. And the idea of the Marines was not really my thing. I don't think I would follow orders very well. But I did do helicopter lessons and I thought, this is my destiny. And I was up in the air, which costed me a fortune. And I didn't like it. So yeah, what I should have done is being an actor probably, and then be a pilot in a movie, but yeah, wasn't meant to be.
Did you buy some aviators at least?
I did have posters from Apache helicopters in my room, and some point. So I thought that was, instead of boy bands, I had helicopters in my room. But then I thought that I was really interested in the real profession. It was more that I wanted to look cool.
Oh yeah, like a lot of us.
Bit sad.
I wasn't made to. Well, I don't think I ever thought or I had much, and this is reflective of having written about it years later and seeing old pictures of myself. There's a lot of pictures of me and some small snippets which I've deleted or buried in archives deep underground, where I'm like, how did I think this was an acceptable look to go outside in my own clothes, looking like that, wearing my hair like this?
Yeah, no.
What was I thinking? But that happens with a lot of people when they look back on themselves in the past. I never thought I looked cool, but I never cared about it. Right? When I was on stage,
that's good.
I wasn't trying to be like this cool guy. I was just facilitating people's enjoyment of their holiday, and I was an implement. I was a tool. I was a tool to help people enjoy and escape the pressures of real life. And so it was kind of like, for me at least, I'm happy to get a laugh either which way it comes, whether I'm the butt of the joke or I made somebody else the butt of the joke, or it was a situation where everyone could share in the same joke. It did not matter. But I wasn't going to be the constant butt of the joke. I made sure there was a bit of a balance at least.
I want to see those pictures now. Do you have any pictures of you looking like that? It would be great to see.
I think for the YouTube video of this now, I thought like
I did. I probably dare you. I remember at the Nautical College somewhere halfway I had a date with the guy, and I just had the day before the date, I had, like, I'm even embarrassed to say to you, I had my hair permed. It was a thing. In my defense, it was a thing.
It was.
But I have really a lot of a lot of hair. So it was like, oh my God, like, well, why did I do that? And then the guy looked at me and he was like, it was definitely not going to happen.
Yeah. Everyone had bouffant hair in the 90s. My mum, my nan, my friend's mum.
True.
And I think it wasn't that bad a look, but you never see people with that look these days anymore.
No.
Was there a moment early on in your career when you realized the human side of life at sea was just as important as the technical side?
I was never very good at the technical side. I'm a qualified engineer according to the diplomas, and I'm not an engineer at heart. So I was like, I knew what to do, but I never been really good. And then the technical sides of things too. So what I needed, because I'm a highly sensitive person as well, so I'm more very receptive towards outside stimuli. And when I'm in the engine room, when I served in the engine room, I like technical could be deck as well, but I just take the engine room as an example. It's so big. If you had like, I don't know, 250, 300 meters ship with like, there's so much going on in the engine room. There's so many sounds, smells,
motions, movements.
And it's so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then if you're very young, you don't really understand what's going on because you learned it all by, at least I did learned it by head, not by heart. I could not have told you how it worked. Only I knew it, like like you learn the 80s countries and 8 countries, and then I could just waffle it up to you, but I couldn't. So when I was there and I realized that like when I was being mentored, some are natural mentors and some aren't. So you need some, for certain people, especially for neurodiversity, you need some extra visualized guidance and not just expect young people on board to understand everything they see, because it's different when you learn it from a textbook than when you're really in the place itself. And of course, we had at the college, we had a sort of an engine room setting. So they train you really, really well. Nowadays, you have fantastic simulators and VRs and things like that, but we never had that kind of thing in that kind of context.
I'd like to do that. I'd like to go and do all that stuff. That looks like fun.
It's really amazing what they can do. It's fascinating. I wish I had that. But it's so for the human side, it's really important because you are a close-knit team on board, and you need the human side is good for your communication, for your psychological safety, for you have different cultures on board, you have different generations on board, and you rely on each other for making decisions in a cohesive way as well. So you cannot just focus on making everything as qualified as possible for your checklist, for your crew, diplomas. It's very important, but you need a human-centered leader as well to bring it all together. Otherwise, your diplomas are useless. And that's what we see with the 80% of 90% of human factors. Accidents at sea are caused by human error.
Are there case studies in your field of work now that are recurring themes, that are like same thing day in, day out? It's this same thing. You know, is there something like the main thing that people struggle with, if there could be something identified?
There's fatigue is a big thing on board, and loneliness at sea.
Yes.
And you have the psychological safety is a big thing. And I think it's more than just a label that sort of seemed to be popped up all of a sudden. But we included it maybe in bridge resource management training and things that you make people safe enough to speak up no matter what kind of rank they have, or, you know, that you need to be able to feel safe to speak up. So that psychological safety depends on leadership. But fatigue is an ongoing issue on board that is not being resolved. And there's also, the more technology on board comes, the less human contact you seem to have. But also there's more alarms ringing that's not related to the operation of the ship at all, but related to the enormous lovely equipment that's coming up. So it's bringing extra pressure on crew rather than that it solves. And the communication is never really being solved. So the technology evolved, but the communication and the human side of it didn't change and didn't progress at the same pace.
It got worse.
It got worse, yes, by thinking, okay, we have 90% human error on board, so caused by humans. So why don't we just skip the human and we get like more automated, which is great, but you forget the humans on board. Like when I was on board, like so many years ago, was already complained about it's not as fun anymore to be a seafarer as with with the previous generations.
That was in the
longer boards.
Early 2000s, people were comparing. It used to be better.
Yes,
already. What were they saying? What were they saying then that was ruining it for the new guys.
Oh yeah, they said like I've sailed on the bigger ships. We sailed with 25 crew max. That was quite a lot already. And they said we used to have 50 or 80, and all these. With me being trained in dual core, so I've been trained deck and engine. You could skip half of the crew, or if you could. When I say crew, you mean the officers and engineers, because you can have one engineer compared. You can have two engineers skip to one because they could do the deck as well. Does that make sense? And then you sail import for half the time because the container terminals are for example, it's very fast. A lot of automation is taking place there as well. So they said we had lots of time in port. And what's the fun of being a seafarer if you're not spending time in port and you're just loading and unloading goes so quickly that you're being in and out before you know it. And it's like really hard work when you're in port. It's not fun. So what's the fun of being a seafarer? So they complained a lot about that. And now you have the complaint about that there's a lot more technology and there's even more checklist coming up and more paperwork, but there's more computerized. Do you think you take away the paperwork? And that's what a lot of complaints that I've heard.
It's like when you hear about chefs who go home, the last thing they want to do is make more food, right? They don't want to cook. And, any career where you're doing something full time, when you get home, that's the furthest thing from what you would like to be doing. So for me as an entertainer, I wouldn't want to be entertaining as soon as I got back into my cabin. I'd take my name badge off, I'd slap it on the magnetized wall, and I'd be a fully committed, miserable bastard.
Yeah, and they think, oh, hello, say something funny, Sam.
Well, yeah, and also, like, if you're getting off the ship and passengers happen to cross your path, they're like, oh, hello, Sam, and they're trying to joke and they're telling, or they'll look into your shopping basket, or they'll be like, oh, yeah, please, a moment to myself. Just leave be.
That's hard. Yeah, no, I can imagine that. I can imagine that. No, that's, I can definitely feel that.
You spoke to the effect about being one of very few women on, in your training, and the only Dutch person on board, you said to me as well. How did that shape your experience? And did you feel like you had to adapt or suppress parts of yourself to fit in to that environment?
Yes, like I spoke to somebody not that long ago who said she was always part of the boys, of the guys, and I was never like that. I've always been the odd one out, and no matter where I am, if you're on board, you have this sort of men culture, boosting towards each other. And it was always about women, when I'm going home, I'm going to do that to my girlfriend, or I'm going to go there and blah, blah. And I felt like this is so not, I wasn't even trying, I felt I was always the one that they made fun of. I didn't drink alcohol, and there was a bar on board, so that didn't really go well. I think I saw me as a weird. So you never
you never succumbed to peer pressure to drink or smoke or do anything like that?
No. I was very, very firm on that. That's part to do with my history. So I was very drilled into that. I'm not drinking alcohol. That's, for me, is a no-go zone. But on the fun things of that, they knew I wasn't drinking. So when they smuggled in beer on ports that was forbidden, guess who could do that have these six packs in the backpack, because they never would have checked me.
You became the drug mule.
I was a drug mule, yeah, probably.
For alcohol.
Yeah.
Just for alcohol. Nothing else.
Go have that, because they don't check you. So that worked well. But yeah, I was always being the odd one out, and I felt the pressure as an only Dutch person. I worked with a few Russians as well, and Ukrainians and Filipino, and it's I've felt, if you're going to look at the cultural aspects of things, the Filipino culture in Asia, a lot of other Asian cultures are more relationship based cultures. So they want to get to know you. They're gonna ask you what you, instead of going like Dutch, go straight into the work mode, and you need to prove yourself first for what kind of work you do instead of who you are. And I always felt a quite good bond with the Filipino cook and Filipino crew and boatsmen, and you wanted to know, they're going quite soft on family and things like that. And I always find myself more connected towards that than towards my own culture, and Russian culture was even more challenging. Yeah, but I'm still with some great guys.
It's kind of funny how over here in this, like, in the Western world, we go on ships to distance ourselves sometimes from our own cultures because we've had enough. That's kind of why we're going.
You see that on holidays, yeah? It's like the last person you want to see is somebody from your own country.
Yeah, no, if I go on holiday, which is rare, I don't like to go to places where there's loads of English tourists. But then there's a lot of English tourists that would go to the same places like Menorca, Magaluf, places. Right. Well, where there's lots of English expats out, and the first place they go to is like an English pub. Do you know what I mean? Like my brother's stag do. We went to Madrid.
Yeah, what's the point?
We went to Madrid, and he had like 20 of his mates with him. And me, and my friend came along as well, and like my brother's father-in-law and one of his friends. It was a good 20 of us, and as soon as we got off the plane, it was like, right, let's find the nearest English pub. So why did we come here?
Yeah, it's the same here. You can have Dutch shops here, or you have Dutch stroopwafels, which I hate.
I like stroopwafels.
No, I don't like them. They're crunchy here. It's not good. You need to have the fresh ones from the markets in the Netherlands. You can only buy them in the Netherlands when they're fresh.
That's fair.
Soft and fresh.
You begin to miss the things that you take for granted, I suppose, at home, like, Heinz baked beans. I used to really crave those because you couldn't get them anywhere and they didn't taste the same, and it didn't hit the spot. And obviously Filipinos and stuff, they would, make food in the mess, and you'd see everyone kind of digging in with their hands, and you're like, no thank you. I eat my food with my knife and fork, and I have my plate to myself, right? But you appreciate that melting pot of all that culture and kind of what people do to make themselves feel at home. And I mean, my mum used to send me like a shoebox now and again in the mail to the ship, and inside the shoebox she put some home comforts in there. So there was like a bag. There was a CD that she'd burnt where she downloaded like some of the top tracks that had come out in the charts, and she wrote a handwritten letter, and
that's so cute.
Chocolates which didn't really last. Sometimes they were a bit melty in the packet, and sometimes the one that really got people was when I opened a packet of Monster Munch, pickled onion Monster Munch. If my cabin door was open and I happened to open a bag, somebody would be like walking past and going, "Have you got Monster Munch?" And I would be like, no, go away.
It's true. I have a list of things that I like when I'm in the Netherlands. And then when I was on a cruise ship, that after 5 months, we got a port of call somewhere in the Caribbean islands that is Dutch. Like it must have been Curaçao. And all the Dutchmen on board, it's a Dutch cruise ship, so a lot of Dutch crew as well, they just massed to the snack bar for frikadellen, bitterballen, licorice, they knew the snack bar that held all the good deep fried Dutch good snacks. So I was very much fan of that as well. And
licorice is very much a Dutch thing, right? Like salt licorice, I've tried, and I don't get the appeal.
The best thing is the double salts, and then you have a little bit of sugar layer on the top. I thought that was like quite normal until I just had my friends here, like they think it's disgusting. It's candy, but it's salt. Go away.
In your accident analysis work, what patterns did you start to notice about why things go wrong at sea? Is there something along those lines that you can elaborate on?
Yeah, what we did for the project was study 20 years of maritime accident investigation branch data, and we pulled it up and for human error and see what do these accident reports say, and what's the most common theme in all of these accidents for human error made. And you have a human error on the surface, so for example fatigue, but the underlying human error is not fatigue at all. Is why are they fatigued? And maybe the schedules, the rest and work and rest schedules are not up to scratch. But then you have another layer underneath that. Why are the rest schedules not up to scratch? Is that somebody, so you come up for the head office, or there's an underlying motive there that they're, why they do that to the crew? And that's where the real root causes lie for accidents. So although you have this tend to have this blame culture from that is the officer of the watch, this and that, so that's what caused the accidents. It's normally every crew member and all the office staff that is involved are all connected. So it's much more complicated than that. And when you do the accident analysis, you have have fatigue is a big issue, but also the attitude and behavior of that, the risk is not appreciated. So I think that's very human to think that would never happen on my watch. And then you taking shortcuts, like the watch alarm, for example, you can have that every 15 minutes or for 30 minutes on board on the bridge to give an alarm to make sure you're not falling asleep, which is great, but you can switch it off. Or, put a piece of chewing gum in between so that it doesn't work or function. So you have shortcuts taken by humans on every situation, and that really causes the accidents. But then you realize, why do they take this shortcuts? Is something not working? Can we do something differently? Is there too many checklists? Is there technology failing? Or do they feel they're having to concentrate too much on the work at hand to be able to just press monitor other buttons that they feel like it's not important at the moment? So there's so much going on at that point. But yeah, the main thing was like the risk is not appreciated. There's fatigue are two really big things.
And they're close-knit kind of like social sort of structures within. They're almost, do you sometimes come across it where there's like favoritism and harassment, hazing, bullying? That's quite a big part of it as well. They have their favorites, and this person doesn't get a look in because of their nationality over,
yes.
You know what I mean? So is that quite common as well?
It's very common. And especially also because there's different genders on board. Nowadays it's going to get worse because you have the old guard of the older Gen X and boomers, and you have the younger Gen Zs coming in, and there's such a difference in upbringing and, coming either from the parents who survived the war, and you have the young Gen Z who sort of have all being brought up with a more of a healthy balance in work and life balance, having different ideas of the world, and they call the snowflake generation, and they're more in tune with what they like and what they want, and with mental health and awareness. So bring these two together and you get like real conflict. So there's a lot of things going on that I think from what we thought, or our generation maybe thought was not bullying at all, was like you have to toughen them up. We like survived that. You're getting a bit of banter on board, or you being tested. That's like famous. If you're the new one, you get like either they test
initiation.
You in some kind of horrible. Yeah, what do you call that? Yeah,
initiation.
Initiation. Yeah, I was looking for that word. And then it's not like meant to be bullying, but it is bullying for maybe a younger generation. So you get like that fine line of where do you go. You get on either side either people getting scared to have younger generation, for example, on board, because they say like I'm not want to be coming across as a bully, so they feel like they're walking on eggshells, and like all they say, we didn't have coaching, therapy, or psychologist in my time. You just get on with it, kind of attitude, versus like the younger generation say, well, because you didn't have therapy, we need to have one. There's so much going on in that area. Before you even start talking about the real, without, not talking about sexual harassment, of course, I'm talking about the lighter bullying, and think what's banter and what is bullying.
Well, yeah, like that was something that the episode I had with Sarah, she was talking about. She was on her first ship and she came on the podcast. She talked about the difference between harassment and bullying and banter, and she was sending out signals, that was hard for other men to hear and not sort of understand how to interpret it.
Good one,
and then,
yes.
And then they weren't backing down. They were pushing their luck a bit too much, and then it's not. Then you don't feel safe because you can't escape these people that are coming on strongly to you. You can't just get off the ship and go home. They know where you live. And, that's a very difficult thing to handle.
It is.
And these issues on board, obviously, like what does psychological safety actually look like on a vessel in real life, in your opinion?
It's like that you feel safe enough to speak up about anything that might trouble you or the safety of the ship, that you feel like you can say that out loud, and you will not have this attitude on board of a blame culture. And that's often not the case, because it either depends on your cultural and the hierarchy of the ship. You still need hierarchy to keep safe on board, but there's a fine line about what's hierarchy and what's toxic leadership in a hierarchical way. Like, I'm the boss and you're a lower in rank, so whatever you say is not relevant, and blame culture. So psychological safety is so immensely important for everybody on board to make them feel their opinion is valued and heard, no matter what they say, for everybody involved.
It is a very fine line. And going back, just again, remembering like initiation tests, right? You know what is crossing the equator party?
Yeah, big thing. I never did that, but I remember my husband did that, and he said that about he'd been a seafarer once, and he said they do all sorts of things.
And this is a thing that I think stems from naval culture, right? So essentially, for people that don't know, obviously, when you cross the equator, every time on board, more or less, there'll be a party or a ceremony of sorts where the entertainment director, cruise director, they'll play like a judge or something, like in a courtroom setting. And the captain will play Poseidon, or like a King Neptune type character, and he'll be sat on deck in costume with a big old trident. And there's other tertiary characters around that. I was a pirate, and I remember there being like a nurse and a doctor, and people were dressed up as mermaids. But the idea was we had guests and certain crew members who had sort of put their hands up and signed a waiver to say, yes, I don't mind being humiliated on deck in front of all the passengers. And,
sign a waiver, wow.
Well, I don't know if it was necessary to sign a waiver. Maybe, just a light-hearted one, like in front of people, like this is a joke. But the judge would read out false accusations and charges, things like hogging the mic at karaoke, pushing in at the buffet line, things like that. How'd you plead? Guilty? Oh, yeah, that's fine. Okay. And then they proceed to cover them in flour, custard, jelly, old cabbage. All of it. All of that, right? That's today's standards, and it still goes on, and it's a lot of fun. And
I think it should have that. Yeah, that's not. I did something similar when we started the nautical college. When before we started our first year, we were going on initiation camp. Probably was that 3 days, 3 nights, I think, somewhere out back near a lake, and they made a mud bath with everything rotten they could find. I think they peed in it at some point as well. And it was like very shallow with a net spanned over it. So you had to be in whatever you were wearing, go underneath, crawl through at least 10 meters of it, I remember. And then if you came out at the other end, you got like a fake tattoo of an anchor on your arm. And then we had to swear an oath as well to Neptune. So we will keep the water safe. Ooh. It's like one of these Finding Nemo scenes, that they do fish in the aquarium, and he needs to swim. Yes. Nemo needs to swim through the bubbles, and they do
rites of passage.
Remember that? I don't know.
Yeah.
So we did that, and we had to swim the canal. A lot of canals in the Netherlands. To have to swim the canal in the middle of the night.
That sounds like
across. Fun. Yeah, so that was my initiation. But not equator, unfortunately. I do miss that. I thought it was a lot of fun. I never see that as bullying at all. So,
no, the original rituals or traditions were a lot more barbaric. People died in them.
Oh, yeah, no. Oh, okay.
Yeah, no. People were, I can't remember. There was a few examples I remember reading about, which was like being keel-hauled, thrown over the side of the ship and like pulled under the ship with a rope, or having to swim. Things like that, man. And what was it, like crawling across the deck with broken glass and, getting jabbed in the side with a hot poker, really, really barbaric stuff. And it's like all in the name of it's their initiation. But, how times change.
Yeah, you always have this generation that was tougher than us. I remember my parents was complaining they had it tougher than us, and we were snowflakes. And then we complained the younger generations are having it too. That's too good. The world is too good for you. You have too many choices. And how can you be depressed? What about your mental health? What's that kind of nonsense you're having? You have everything. So yeah. I wonder if that's a common theme always having that generation thing, and
Oh, yeah, massively.
if we find the initiation barbaric as well, do the younger generations think that's our stuff was barbaric? I don't know.
I don't know, but it goes back to that old Monty Python sketch. You think you were poor, we were poor. I'll tell you about being poor.
More of a victim than I am. Who has the badge of the biggest victim? And
yeah. With all of these initiations and things and all of the work and isolation, etc., burnout in this space is quite common. And it's something that you've spoken to a lot with people that come to you for mental health coaching. Are there certain signs that people can register when they are experiencing something like burnout? What are the signs that something isn't right?
Some of the signs is to pay attention is that when your often our mind overrules the body in what you were experiencing in your body. So I remember when it happened to me, I ignored everything that happened, all the signs. I ignored the signs. So you have the red flags of being more fatigued, or, think, I'm just working hard, or needs to go to bed earlier. But the biggest reason for burnout is never the physical body. It's more that with your mental health starts to decline is when you no longer enjoy what you do, and then your body starts to giving red flags to it, like it doesn't cooperate. Your body doesn't cooperate anymore. It says stop. So you get headaches. I had visual migraines, so the floaters in front of your eyes, so that forced me to stop. Got dizziness. A lot of people have depression on the side, and they take some medication for it, maybe, or so go for aspirins every day, going for all these high energy drinks every day, more coffee, and then at some point you're so tunnel visions in the work you do. Yeah, a lot of people try to block it out because the mind's a powerful thing. And say, well, this does not happen to me. It's nonsense. Even if your work is great and you still burn out, or there's some kind of conflict at the workplace that you're going through with manager, and that's really a big one. And
managers.
And they're bringing you to your knees. And I've talked to really tough men who've been brought to their knees with a micromanager. And because I couldn't, it's very subtle. It chips away at you.
Yeah.
And it's like a slow poison injected in you. And then you're trying to rationalize it with your mind. And then you're trying to maybe reason with yourself, and you need the job, you need your mortgage, and, maybe you love your job, your colleagues are nice. It's, if I quit, it could be worse somewhere else. And you're trying to reason with all of these. And in the meantime, it's getting worse and worse and worse. And you realize that at some point your body doesn't want to cooperate anymore. So by that point that your body shuts down, that is already, you're in a far advanced state of burnout that you physically cannot commit yourself anymore to come back to work. And then we want to avoid that for people who are facing burnout. It's often that they're trying to reason with themselves, like, everybody has something, and then it takes up all of your time when you're in your weekend and you're still thinking about work or complaining or getting depressed and your confidence is low. All of these.
I'd be interested to know. Obviously, it's very difficult to get accurate analytics on studies and things because the tech has changed so much in the last 10, 15, 20 years. And our reliance on it has become like nothing we've ever seen, right? We were the first generation to be online, grew up using tech like that and being able to play video games of a highly absorbent nature. They used to be a lot more pick up, put down. And now you can't put them down because it won't let you. It's a continuous game. And so with the reliance on tech, the constant need to be on social media, playing video games, all of these things. You think it's possible that, we've not done the next generation too many favors because they aren't getting real social, genuine connections? Right, they're not going out and playing in the same way that we would used to play out with our friends down the park, or it's become a lot more, like I said, reliant on these things. So therefore, the rate of burnout is higher as well because they're not able to tackle or cope with the pressures of reality as much. Do you think there's a parallel to that?
I think that's a really good question, and it's a really good observation. because I think it's a blessing for us, not for me, like for us, for our generations that not have been exposed to social media in that way. But social media comes, like, not just social media, all the technology, and it speed up your life pace a lot because of every technology that comes on board. You can speed up the time amounts you spend in ports, for example. Loading, unloading is speeding up. Social media, you have lots of contact with how other people doing it. So the comparison level for yourself, to compare yourself with all these people who are influencers and showing their best life out there, and it's so much pressure, like to say, oh, I don't like my job, what do I do now? For example, I didn't like my job, I didn't have a plan B, so I stuck with it. Because where do you go? You go to a job agency? And that's not very helpful.
Yeah.
So that's such a difference. And I think there's definitely, because of social media, there's also more talk about mental health and about burnout and well-being. And people use AI, ChatGPT as a therapist, and they type it in and then they get what they want to hear. So it's not really a genuine conversation. And he's throwing in statistics, and AI is it's sort of bending towards what you want to hear. So it's a very dangerous tool to use for well-being as well. And I think the comparison factor is massive, but also I don't think us as humans are built to process that much information in such a short period of time. We're exposed to all the drama of the whole world on the news. You just have to be negatively biased and then Google about it and you will find it. And that's the negative filters, the negative bias that we all carry with us naturally. We never had that. So you just read the news and having a newspaper, or you watch the news at 6 o'clock and then you switch off after 10 minutes, and it's like what that your country wants to expose you to. It's not the real reality of the whole world and what's happening to so and so in a classroom shooting in America. You'll be filtering that out. But now it's massive and it's short time span. So it's like a few seconds here, a few seconds there. The time span of watching videos is only a few seconds. It's 8 seconds or something. Yeah. And then you move on. And then you spend a few hours doing that. Your brain becomes, I can't imagine it can be healthy for your brain either. And you do not make real contacts. You do not go out and give your brain a relaxing time. You see, if you have a few minutes on the train, you still go on your phone.
Yeah. There was a TV show, I don't know if you remember it, on MTV called Cribs.
Yes. I remember that.
That was like early days of the internet and pre-social media, but it was the only real kind of glimpse into the lives of the rich and the famous, right? So that was like...
Dude, look at my 8 golden cars.
Yeah. Comparison is the thief of joy. And watching shows like that, you would often be like, well, I haven't got a swimming pool and a tennis court and, all of these bells and whistles in my house. But it was the only thing that you had at a certain time of viewing that you could watch to make yourself feel bad about your own situation. But only looking at your phone is enough to send you spiraling because it's constant. This person, that person, and everyone else. And, it's hard to filter sometimes what you don't want to watch, because if you accidentally watch something for too long, then the algorithm thinks, well, this person likes to watch this stuff that makes them feel bad for some reason. I'm going to throw even more stuff at them. That's why social media is so toxic.
It's horrible. Yeah, it's like the comparison and filters, and for women is an extra layer of that. You cannot be... You're either too thick, you're too thin, you're too fat, you're too old. So you cannot be old. And there's so much judgment all the time, everywhere. And then we have this phenomenon of being a superwoman. So you superwomen are like, you have to be a great parent, a great mother, a great wife, great friend, great career woman. And then if you drop the ball, it's like, yeah, but she has a career, a super career, and have 5 kids, is still super skinny, super ripped, and is a very nice person, and lives in a really great house. So what are you moaning about? And then it's horrible. Women are doing this to themselves. And I don't think men have quite the same exposure as women in that kind of thing.
It's funny you say that, because I literally just watched it with my partner the other day. The Louis Theroux documentary on Netflix that just came out, but it's about entering the manosphere. So have you seen that?
Manosphere.
Yeah, have you
I
seen that
haven't
one?
seen. I know which documentary you mean, but I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, no. So it's about, toxic role models for men, how they're being absorbed and taught the fundamentally sexist, misogynistic views,
Yes.
or very contradictory. So one of the guys, he doesn't agree with women who are on OnlyFans, for example, and yet he's
Yeah.
happy to, work closely with an agency that helps to promote them, and he gets a cut of their work, and he's happy to sleep with them, but he'd never want one as like a full-time girlfriend or to be the mother of his children. It's a mess as far as these people's mindsets go. They're all in it for the money, and they're open about it most of the time, but they don't care about the moral side of it. And they're sending young, directionless, broken men. That's their main demographic, it seems like. This, whirlpool of mixed messaging, but they don't care because they get paid, and it's what keeps them famous and able to have a lifestyle that fulfills them in their eyes, at least. But yeah, it's an interesting documentary. It
sounds horrible.
No, it isn't a pleasant watch. Some of the stuff they say really is triggering, but it's not the deepest of documentaries. It's less about the origins of it and, what can we do and, all of this. And it's more just kind of showcasing some key individuals within that manosphere space. Like a lot of reference to Andrew Tate is made, but he's not in the documentary. So it's, it's like a parade for some of these key figures and trying to understand their thoughts and feelings behind why they do what they do. But yeah.
Well, yeah, there's there's so many interesting discussions can derive from that, can spin off from that.
Exactly.
It's endless for the.
That's the thing, but we're not talking too much about that. We've gone very much away from deck tales today.
I know. I could just get 100 topics just from that.
I think the manosphere, we could possibly change the E to an I and call it dick tales for a very short moment in time.
I like that.
Just to play devil's advocate, though, I don't agree. I don't agree with obviously these people in the manosphere, but you can see they're very unapologetic in that they say these things and they know there's no substance behind it. But fuck it, it doesn't matter. YOLO. I'm making money. I'm going to have a better quality of life. So what? I mean, that's one way of looking at it, and that's the way that they most of the time.
Well, I come across some really interesting characters in my time as coach as well. So men are so somebody through LinkedIn invited me for, I think he wanted private coaching, but then for a whole day, and he wanted, I don't know, it was just a pretend client, I think, a man, an older gentleman, and he wanted to private coaching from me he wanted to fly over from somewhere and then hire me for the whole day. It was something so very dodgy about it. It's like, yeah, sure, if you want to call it coaching. Like it was all red flags, and I just started out, and then like, there's so many things that you need to be aware of as women in the industry as well. Like men, like they don't have a conscience, they don't care. But they're, on the other hand, they're really interesting to observe, to see what's motivating them, how do they get there, why are they so different in their manosphere.
Yeah, well, what you just said about being flown out to do some coaching for someone for a day, well, I don't get that same sort of thing, but I had a situation recently which was kind of similar. So I get booked a lot of the time by people through an app to go and do odds and sods handyman work, right? So it could be painting, decorating, a little bit of light carpentry, minor fixes, furniture assembly, mounting TV shelves, loads of things that to me is common sense. But the other day, Tineke, someone booked me, right? It was categorized as furniture assembly, but in the task description and in the chat, they immediately said to me, just to let you know, this is a bit of a weird request, but basically I'm a massage student, and in order to qualify, I need to log certain amount of hours with people who I don't know, who can give me unbiased feedback that I'm doing a good job as a massage student. So I know it's weird, but would you be willing to come to my place, allow me to massage your feet, and I will pay you for the hassle? And I was like, oh wow, that is a stretch.
Too good to be true, yeah?
Sounds like, yeah. Well, I could get paid to have a massage. That sounds great on paper. But what about the psychological safety aspect of it? And I was like, okay. I told my friends, and they sort of was like, have you done any risk analysis on this at all, Sam? Have you gone to and done it already, or are you just telling us before you go? I was like, yeah, no, this is supposed to be in like 2 weeks' time. I haven't gone. I haven't said I'm going. I don't think I had, at least. I think I provisionally said, just for now, I said, oh, let me get back to you. And after speaking to my friends, I felt a bit more on edge, shall we say, because that's what friends do, isn't it? Sometimes they said to me, Sam, what if you go there and this guy isn't just one guy and it's a group of men and they do things that you can't avoid, right? They pin you down and stuff. I was like, oh my God, I hadn't even thought about that. What if, all these what ifs. And I think the last text I'd sent the guy was like, if you can provide details of the college and an instructor that can verify you are a student doing massage and this and that, then okay, I'll come and do it. Right, fine. It's, it's not like it's any effort on my part, really, other than going there and coming back. But because my friends had mentally upset the apple cart so much, I was like, no, that's it. I cancelled, and I didn't, wait for his response, and I just locked it out of my memory. But then I thought about it retrospectively a little bit. Like, people are booking me to come and do things like mounting this, that, and the other, building this, fixing that, and it says it on the task, and they, you go over the task in the chat, beforehand. But who's to say any of those are any more legitimate than this person's request to want to massage my feet?
It's a weird request, especially from a man to another man. And then why don't you, if you're a massage student, you get I don't think you have any problems getting fake clients or practice clients in from your network.
That's
that's a bit weird. That's a bit weird. But it says that as a man, you're exposed to the same kind of, as my husband said as well. There are lots of, as if you're a painter, decorator, or a plumber, I think you actually go out and do things. Bathrooms, there are lonely women, single women, or bad in their marriage, and they actually look for contact. Oh, I have to think about that. I don't know my bathroom done. I get that. Men are exposed to the same things. Yeah, lonely, desperate.
I have had clients over the years who I get that vibe from them. They could have done the job themselves. They just wanted to get somebody in to have somebody to talk to, or not talk to, and just sit back and say nothing and lick their lips occasionally.
That's bad. We have that on board as well, and to bring that back to the dactyl. Sorry, I remember a time that I was where was it? I was in Japan somewhere, and I had a boyfriend, and I had his photo pinned in my cabin, but he was in a swimming suit. So for them, it would be half naked, but it was a swimming suit, and he had that pinned down in the cabin. But they didn't know. They did a cabin check. As they do when they come on board, and they didn't know I was a female, so there was they thought they were asking so many questions about that. And I had my bras hanging up over the radiator, and I had a half naked man photo in the cabin, and they were like, what is going on here? I think you're going to countries as well where being gay or even black is completely forbidden. And that was it was quite fun, really, though. It was no, I'm a woman, all legit. Doesn't matter. There's a lot of communication around that now. Lots of change, but some countries are not that. Of course, they can't have that. But that was quite funny. It was quite funny as being female officer there, having that kind of stereotyping.
Sometimes it's nice to have a conversation with people rather than just asking questions and listening and reacting. This has felt like a bit more of a conversation today.
I find it very hard as a coach not to ask you questions. I'm really well aware that you're a podcast leader and I be interviewed, but it's really hard. Normally it's going against my grain to ask you but where do you come from? How do you live? Where's your experience?
Why do you think this? I was just thinking, Tineke, if I wanted to take full advantage of this phone call, much like I should have or could have taken advantage of that paid for foot massage, rather than me asking you a bunch of questions, I could get you to ask me the questions and treat this as paid therapy.
I'd love to listen more to you. Like you have such an interesting history for yourself with the cruise ship industry and entertaining, and like you interview all these people. I find it far more fascinating.
Well, maybe there's a part two we can do another day. So let's go back on track as best we can. Was there a moment in time that you can remember as being one of the main reasons behind what led you into coaching, and how did you know that it was the right path to take?
Yeah, it's a good question. What led me into coaching was mostly my own struggles with the workplace. I attract naturally a lot of narcissistic leaders, co-workers. Narcissism is an ongoing theme in my life as I'm an empath. So I learned that later in life, as well as a highly sensitive person, but I'm specifically in tune with other people's emotions. And for me, that was always a survival mechanism when I grow up. And the flip side of the coin is being a narcissist. So you have empath and narcissism. Their bully and victim attract each other for a very good reason. Sometimes they're similar in how they grow up, and one diverted towards protecting themselves into people pleasing and reading the room and getting really in tune with other people's emotions as survival. And the other, as a narcissist, you would get into an alternative, more pumped up version of yourself to survive as a better version of yourself, so that you hide the real version of yourself, that nobody will see the true self of you, of actually maybe how you are for real. That wasn't good enough. So it's an ongoing theme. And when I struggled with that, at some point there were like 3-4 people within my near vicinity that was like I worked with narcissism, and that nearly broke me down in such a way like I can't do this anymore. I can't work with this anymore. It's like it's chipping away at your self-esteem, your health, your mental health, physical health. And I really struggled with that. It's like poison in your body if you're starting to be so angry that you think, like, why can't the surroundings not see? Why do other people not see what kind of toxic behavior this person has? Like, narcissism is such a bad way to work with. And that realization that I attracted that myself, like the I in that part, like I'm not the victim in this place. I can't change the workplace like that, but I can change how I perceive it. And I have something within my behavior and within how I perceive the world and within my language, in how I talk to people, that I attract narcissism towards me in that kind of way that changed my outlook on life. And it was like such a big difference in what can I do to change my situation, instead of like, how do I change everybody else in my workplace by changing the workplace, maybe changing my job, changing the people, complaining to HR, complaining to that person. That didn't work. So, life gives you more of what you need to learn. So I kept throwing in the narcissists keep coming back. But that lesson in what I could do changed my perspective. Like, okay, there's something that I do that I attract bullies in me. And I had that since I was very young. I attract bullies. And that changed me in such a way that I think I want to help other people in the workplace getting in better with teamwork and leadership, and like that derive from the need to work with teams and with people, individual people. And first, not necessarily with toxic workplace. You can call it toxic, dysfunctional. There are all kinds of problems that derive from that, and probably it comes from a passion. Like, I want to change that. With perspective, you can do a lot. With awareness, you can do a lot. It's just, you all wear these kind of filters, different glasses of how you view the world, and it depends how you grow up. It depends on economic climate, socials. It's, who your friends are, how you grow up, how you feel. There's so many factors that play, and if you understand that and understand the other person, you can learn to communicate better. And that's that was the idea of becoming a coach. I want to work with that. I want to change that.
Yeah. But so I think you may have just answered this already, but so how does your experience at sea and your realization of attracting narcissists and everything you just said, how has that shaped you and the way that you work with your clients today? Do you give them that case study or that example of how you've learn to cope with things over the time, in the hope that that might be something that they factor into their own situation?
Yeah, I use lots of my own experience, but mainly I try to focus first on the other person. And there is like, and only throw in parts of the experience if that's relevant for them. It's important for them to first to show what brings to bring to the meeting what's important for them. And I want to find out what their perspective is and what kind of bubble are they, and what's their narrative, how does that story for them unfold, and who are the players around them, and what are the negative biases they maybe carry, what are the other biases they carry, and can we change that first? What do they want? So it's all about them. And then I can bring in something from myself, like my language changed or my narrative changed because I saw a different perspective and I took accountability. But if they're not there yet, or they're not willing to take accountability and say, well, it's not about me, it's about them, they should change, and they did that to me, then there's nothing much I can do other than trying to facilitate that the best way I can to make sure they have the tools and techniques to deal with that, because it takes time. Everybody is on their own journey, and it doesn't matter where you are, they're on their own journey. And it's the most powerful thing you can do for coaching is to meet them where they are. Otherwise it doesn't work. You could have told me like 10 years before that, and I would not have believed you. I would go on a forum online and complain about it, and what did they do to me, and be angry. And I think HR at some point gave me an opportunity to do a course with that. And I was offended. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. I don't need a course. It's them. They need a course. So I've been there myself, and I would never have been open to that suggestion. So to meet a client and being there or having that experience, they need to come with, okay, I'm in my lowest point now. I can't deal with it anymore. I need help. What can I do to change? You create your own reality in a way. And that's very, very important to understand. You're not just a victim of bullying. Okay, now I'm not talking about like sexual harassment and really, really bad cases, and I'll say, oh, you need to take accountability for what you've done. That's not what I'm saying at all. I say, like, with bullying and victims, they choose each other subconsciously. They attract for a very good reason, and it's how you maybe it's very important. Don't take this the wrong way, like you're all there and provoking the bully. It's not like that at all. It's like having cases from Onboard, like you may be very in your intonation very defensive already, and you're maybe already negatively biased in a way, like, see, there you have it. He's always picking me. And you filter out all the good comments. That is what we naturally do. And you might not have been, you don't remember the good parts at all. It depends how your filters work and how you're viewing the world. And there's so much into that. And you really need quite some time with somebody to understand their view.
Yeah, no, that's a good point to make. Of course, it's a case by case basis. In terms of leadership culture and the future of the maritime industry, what do you think leaders on board ships are still getting wrong today?
I think it's still getting wrong that although we talk about mental health and well-being and human-centered leadership, is still seen as weak and still seen as sensitivity as a weakness in that kind of thing. Human skills, human soft skills, psychological safety is seen as a soft skill rather than as a technical skill that is needed for the safety of the ship. And I think that is still underestimated. You still have lots of cultures that their hierarchy is seen as strong and powerful. And by showing your sort of a vulnerability or your more human side, working with your human and one-to-one as everybody's equal is not seen as powerful. So, the world is like full of, like, if especially on board, if you have extrovert versus introverts, and you have the one with the most powerful voice is still counted as the more intelligent one. And you have that with a lot of people who are in a neurodiversity spectrum as well. So rather than us tuning into where their real true power lies into fine tuning or eye to details, leaders don't take enough time for that to really take that on board and make the most use of it, as the world especially with hierarchy and empowerment, is with the louder voice, the extroverts ventilating your opinion, and it comes human-centered leadership is highly underestimated, and the power of what it can do. You could call it human-centered, you call it empathic leadership or kind leadership. It's like, being kind is being weak. Yes. It's being seen as weak. And we need to step away from that, because you can be hierarchical, but also kind. And you can also be human. And some countries, they do need a strict hierarchy to be able to be seen as a powerful leader. And I accept that. Compared to the Netherlands, we don't really believe in that. But so you can be hierarchical, but fair. It depends on the surroundings where you are. If you're in the military, you can't be to say, it can't be, you have a powerful voice, and you can't be just human-centered leader. You don't have time for that, or you're not being seen as powerful. And we accept that. But you can do both. One doesn't exclude the other, and that's still not being done correctly on board. And it's all about money. Unfortunately, for a lot of companies, it's not about human. You see seafarers being replaced in a heartbeat. It's been unseen workforce, unfortunately. You see that during COVID. You see that now on the streets of Horus, if I don't pronounce that correctly, is like
Hormuz.
All of a sudden, what's going on in the world right now, and the seafaring, the tankers that are being exploded, and it's more like the seafarers are in general, whatever happens in politics, the seafarer is more seen as a resource. And it's like most people that I speak to have no idea what the merchant navy even means. To say, you're on ships, it's navy, blah. In navy, they know the navy. It's not. It's like 90% of our world goods are transported overseas. Somebody has to do it. And these are seafarers. And then there's surprisingly so many people, even my close friends, have no idea what that actually means and who they are. Is because their seafarers are unseen workforce. And I find that such a shame, because there's so many mental health issues. There's so many suicides that have been unreported. And why are they not more promoted? Why is the profession is in serious danger of, we have a seafarer gap that's been proven. There's not many people willing enough to stay long enough to fill the gaps of captains and our more senior ranks. They're coming enough influence, people come in, but not enough to stay in the higher ranks to fill the gap of the needs of the industry. And how can we make the profession of seafarer more attractive? And the truth is, it's not. We don't do that yet. We have that kind of backward situation in the industry that we're still focusing on the promotion of money rather than, we see some companies, there being mass 800 seafarers laid off in a heartbeat, and all for the promotion of, but otherwise we didn't have enough, we'd have gone under. Is that true? Is that really true? And it's not promoting seafarers in a really good daylight, or they're stuck on board during COVID, or in whatever political situation you have. The seafarers are stuck, and everybody is talking about. Indeed, you have lots of pollution at sea when oil tankers are exploding, or something happens when your Amazon parcel doesn't arrive and gets stuck in a canal somewhere.
Yeah, you don't think about the journey the package has taken. You just think,
it's Suez Canal. There's my Suez TV screen. It's up there, and Suez Canal stuck.
Yeah,
but you don't think about seafarers sailing the ship as anything maybe that goes automatic. I don't know, and not being talked about. And I feel very passionate about that. I think that should change. Was that even an answer to the question? I remember I don't got so caught up in that.
A lot of these questions are very broad, and so tangents will happen. But then everything we just discussed was relevant in many ways, and it opened up the conversation. But you said with the training of leaders and things, the human side of shipping is important, right? And we train people technically, but not necessarily in the human skills department. Why do you think that the gap still exists? And what are some simple changes crews or leaders could implement to immediately improve life on board?
It's a good question because what I see from my younger clients, and they fall in the Generation Z category, they don't want to. They are willing to come on board. They stay there, and a few from the cruise industry as well. They got bullied. There's harassment. There's unfair treatment, micromanagement. Not willing. They don't have a voice. They quit. They move on quite more quickly. When we were younger and you just got a job, or my parents had a job, my mother had a job for 40 years, it never crossed her mind to change that. You stuck to what you knew. And we job hop, the younger generations have gone shop around. So like, it's better somewhere else, I go there. And they're not willing to stay under the sort of the circumstances. Yeah. And especially not because there's a mixed match between the older generations now and the younger generations in values and needs. We tend to think that the younger generations have a far more balanced view of the world. Like we want to work to sustain our living needs and not the other way around. Like we got happy that you got a job. My parents hammered it in. You just get a good job and then, you do as you're told and it's such a different political climate and social climate nowadays as well. So they don't stay. If they haven't a bad experience, they don't stay. And why would they? And instead of trying to bend the new Generation Z that have been seen as sensitive, oversensitive, they can't deal with it anymore. They don't know what it's like to, blah, blah. There's a lot of talk around that to say, why not try and fit instead of them fitting to our models, how we used to do it, and that worked. The other way around, why don't we try to listen to them, what they need, and try to model that a bit more, because they're the younger generation, they need to fill up the gap, so there's,
but it's a balancing act,
there's a lot of
it?
Things.
It's a balancing act of if you give them an inch, they take a yard. And then the whole model unravels.
Unravels, yeah, and you will never get like I had a captain and I who was facilitating a team with a younger woman in the Gen Z generation, and I was being contacted for like, she's very sensitive, and maybe you can help because we don't really get on together, and she she calls me a chauvinistical pig. Like, I'm willing to be open, and I think she's overly sensitive, so I sent her through therapy. She was offended. So of course she's offended, because she in her perspective, you're the one who needs therapy, not she. So you get like already a conflict. So both are right, and I understand his point of view. Like, how do you work with a female? Like in how he grew up, we have a little bit of banter. There's women. If you look at like certain old-fashioned 90s TV programs like Miami Vice or the A-Team, the woman is seen as more of a sex symbol, and they get all the jokes and sexism. That's fine. But you can't do that anymore. The world's changed, and you get that older generation trying to be very sensitive around women nowadays. Otherwise, they start complaining you about being a chauvinistical pig. But from the other side, I understand it as well. How do you get them to see you and take you seriously as a young female who've done all the experience and you lack the experience, but you meet the degrees and things? How do you? It needs to be it needs to be a balance. And if you understand the perspective from both ways, then it's already easier to communicate. It's like, okay, don't take it personal. It's not like this is the way he grew up or she grew up, and this is the climate of their parents that, being hammered that kind of values in. And this is the generation from now. Maybe if we have a different circumstances and there's World War III breaking out, and how will their generation would just repeat itself in the kind of way we deal with things, maybe. It's all about awareness, having that kind of perspective and awareness and respect for each other, I think.
I think one thing that just came to mind, I went to Oxford over the weekend to visit some friends. And one thing that they got for me as a birthday present was to go and see Harry Enfield, who's just started a new tour. And are you aware of Harry Enfield? Not at all? You must have seen him. He's been on TV for donkey's years. Loads of money. Loads of money. He has like loads of sketch show characters that he's portrayed over the years. Tim Nice but Dim, The Slobs, Mr. You Don't Want to Do That. All of these sketch show characters. But one of the sketches he had on his show was like this old timey, black and white, very kind of stuck in the past views in these short infomercial type sketches. And one of the sketches is called Women Know Your Limits. It's like they're having a dinner party and all the men are talking business, and then a woman comes in with a very, dangerous opinion of her own, and she should know her limits. And it's like, then they show a parallel, which is like after the men are done talking, the woman says, "I love kittens. They're so cute and fluffy." And then the men are go, "What a delightful, precious creature you are, oh, how I adore you." And so it's like, women, know your limits. And it's stressing the point that, you're not allowed to have these opinions, but that it's wrapped up in this parody of this is how the old generation used to actually think. And he was saying about, the origins of these characters in the show, and how one woman had actually written into Harry and said that basically she runs a feminist kind of studies class, and she always shows that sketch, Women Know Your Limits, at the start of the course.
I think that's really funny. It reminds me of the series Life on Mars. Have you seen it? It's like a detective DI. It's about Sam Taylor. So what name? And he's in year 2012, maybe it was a series coming. So modern times, but he get an accident and he's in a coma, and he being transferred to the 70s. And he comes in the same police office, and he's like wondering where he is and what's happening to his office. But the way he started to function as a detective inspector in the office in the 70s there, and because he's going, and you compare it with modern times, but it's so inappropriate how they deal with situations compared to the modern times. How would they deal with the one and only female in the office? And it's so inappropriate. It's hilarious. And I realized like there's something in there. This is being real life. I see photos of my father's office with the feet on the desk and smoking during meetings, and there must have been a more colorful world where women were not really invited in that kind of situations. My mother was in a job, like it was not first quite frowned upon that she would even have a job. Like, we're coming such a long way.
I think by highlighting the ridiculousness of that helps us to improve on things, right? If we didn't do these parody sketches, then we would just consider it the norm. But yeah, that was an interesting tangent.
I like that. You should. I think they're kind of making fun in sketches and comedy sketches like that for situations like that. Also in courses and workshops, it's really important to make you reflect and get the mirror there, because that's why these series, both in the UK and the United States, or The Office, has been so immensely popular because it's so recognizable and it's so funny. On the subject of personal reflection and advice, looking back, what would you say to your younger self stepping on board for the first time? Don't take everything personal. It's not about you.
It's not about you.
The things I've been like, I remember being in the engine room, and I was asking a question. I asked a question about the engine, and I got told off. Like, if you're crazy. If you ask that, then forget about it. I'm not even gonna go and explain it. I was that dumb. And talking about psychological safety, you never ever ask the question ever again, because what if they been already telling me that I'm dumb again? So to see that and looking back on that, say that's not your fault. It was not about you. It was somebody trying to, maybe they didn't know. They didn't know the answer. Maybe, there was peer pressure. They were trying to pump themselves up with ego. There's a lot of things at play that you're not aware of. Like, if you have that kind of bullying, harassment kind of situation on board, it's seldomly about you in that kind of way. Although there's a lot of things that you can do to change that. Not every argument is about, not every offense, conflict is about you.
Mm. And for someone who feels like they don't fit in, what would you tell them along those lines? Obviously, it's not
It's
about you. Is that the same answer you more or less give?
Well, yeah, just be yourself. I was afraid to be myself. I'm an empath. I'm very eye sensitive. I don't drink. I have this stamp on me quite like, oh, you're being a woman as well. You don't talk about other women, about prostitution is a real thing on board. Really going a
Mm,
lot going. There's this kind of male fun kind of drinking habit, bar hopping kind of thing. And I felt the odd one out. I was the odd one out. And I didn't feel like I could be myself. But it's such a revelation, it's so nice to meet somebody else who's like that. And then you think, oh my God, it's so nice just to be me and just embrace that you're different, because we all bring something very unique into the environment. And then you will see other people, if you embrace your differences and your uniqueness, other people will settle themselves as well as you being different. That's okay, is because if you don't fit in and you're trying to be somebody you're not, people, subconsciously figure that out, and it gets worse. It
mm,
backfires. Because you're not like that for real. And if you just embrace your weirdness, let's say, and be confident in that and set your boundaries, people will respect that more than when you're trying to be somebody you're not. And it's sometimes all going on a subconscious level. But yeah, I promise people that just embrace your weirdness, just be yourself, and it will all work out.
that's very good. I like that. I like that. What would you say out of your years at sea has been the funniest or, the most ridiculous situation you've ever found yourself in?
Yeah, I think the most ridiculous things that I did happen on the cruise ship I was as well, because it was my first year, and there was such a dynamic of different types of crew going on, and with staff of shops and entertainments, and I think everybody had a date with some other crew member on board. And at some point, I thought was very funny. I don't think his wife was further funny. Was one of the guys was an engineer. He cheated on his wife, which his wife didn't think is funny, I think. But he was hiding his girlfriend on board when his wife came on board in one port of call in what we called a sort of a mortuarium on board, and they kept flowers fresh in it when there was nobody dead. It sounds
Wow.
like really awkward situation. I remember that, like, she was a flower, we called it a flower girl, but she was probably is doing lots of work about all the displays on board with flowers and things. And she was doing she was hiding up there. And I think your wife must know. And then we made a lot of fun of that. Like, it's like you brought it up on yourself.
He kept her in the mortuary.
Yeah, but she was working. She's not. She was working in a mortuary. This story gets weird now if you say it out loud. So, like, the flowers, to keep the flowers fresh, and
Right.
I wasn't in there, so I don't know all the details. I was just heard it through the grapevine and going on deck, and then there was a lot of situations like that. Lots of stories actually, but like really laugh out loud is like lots of situations, but not something that can tell you that was like really.
No, yeah, obviously it's funny, subjective, depending on what angle you're telling the story from. But have you personally ever had a moment like where you remember being like, "How is this my life?" Like that, it's unbelievable. I'm in this situation right now.
I do. I thought about that, and there's a lot. And then one thing that stands out when I would tell that to friends, they would not believe me, is like how you are crossing an ocean part and you have a sort of a flying fish. They have herring, it's like herring with wings, and they
Mm.
fly over the water and they sometimes land on deck. And then you have the guys from the Philippines that love fish. They swoop it up with the with a net and fry it the same day. I think, how is that even a thing? You wouldn't believe me if you're not sailed. You wouldn't believe me if I would tell you it's a flying fish and they fry it when they lands on deck. They catch it and they fry it.
I'm
That's
kind of
such
like
a ridiculous ridiculous.
I'm kind of like that when I see a bunch of food go out on reduction. I swoop that all up because I'm like, I don't like waste.
Exactly. You see,
Or
yeah,
maybe I'm just tight with money. That's probably what it really comes down
maybe
to.
you're one in the section that is like it's just about right. You probably will be okay, but you can still eat it.
Yeah, exactly. It's got another couple of days if it goes in straight in the fridge, or I'll put it in the freezer and I'll have it in a month or two.
One of the most memorable events was in Novorossiysk. I remember Novorossiysk is somewhere in Russia, somewhere like deep down in there, and then walking by myself alone onto a local market with all the drama and the period buildings of it's such a remarkable situation that you're there alone in that situation. You would never ever go on there to a holiday. It would never cross your mind. It's not like it's hardly Tenerife, is it? And it's so fascinating. And then you walk there by yourself and do the bargaining and buy some things for on board, buy some fruits or some snacks. And it's such an amazing place to be in. You have all kinds of places that you visit and you think, how is that possible? How is that my life? I would never ever go there normally. And that's nice.
That's one of the main draws, isn't it, for why people
the main draws there.
Go to
and
do
you
that
can go
in the
out
first
there
place.
and you get shipped to all kinds of places. Or when we were up in the northern Baltic with icebreakers in front of us, like this is fascinating. You see a little, a seal or a polar or whatever it is you see out there. It's like impossible. This is really really cool to have the experience like that.
Yeah, not only just cool, but also helps to broaden your worldview.
It broadens your worldview, yes. And there's a magic to sailing at the same time, to get on that positive note with especially when you're working alone on deck, or when you're on the bridge watch and you have 4 hours and you're working in snow and you're working in the middle of the night, or there's this silence, and that's magical, and you're just one with the ocean and one with the sea, and there's magic in there. And you meet all kinds of people in port as well, with loading and unloading on cargo, and sometimes you can't understand each other, but there's you get this sense of that we're all connected no matter where you are. There's no real boundaries. We're all sort of the same thing. We want the same things, and then it doesn't matter. It's beautiful.
Oh, so it's something that Captain Sam said to me. I've mentioned him a couple of times today, but every now and again, something you say just makes me go, oh yeah, he said this. And he said something about what he took away from being at sea for so many years is just how insignificant it's made him feel, right? Because of the scale of every operation with regards to ships. But that's helped him take things less seriously and become a little bit of a better leader in that respect, because, he sees the similarities in all of us, but then all of us are incomparable to the scale and sheer, enormity of the ocean and what is going on beneath the surface. So
you're nobody. Yeah,
you're nobody. Exactly. You're a small part. Don't take it personally, but you're
the biggest ship in the world, and when you're in the ocean, you're just being pummeled around like it's nothing. And that makes you very humble.
I would say you probably feel like, I don't know, if you're captaining a single engine mini boat, or you're captaining the largest cruise ship in the world, mentally you'd probably, very different ends of the spectrum, but you're no bigger or better than the other guy.
No, you're not. And in the world, if you are that out there in the ocean, that it doesn't matter. It's very humbling. Yeah.
But, just going back real quick. So on the topic of isolation, was there a moment at sea when you felt completely alone, even though you were surrounded by people?
Yes. Yeah. As I said, I've always been a bit the odd one out. And then I felt quite lonely on board of most Was it one of the last container vessels I sailed on? There were not many people there. There were 12, but we did lots of ports of calls and things. But because I only had a captain who was Dutch, and I was like 24, maybe 25, and he was 67 or 68. He was he was like a pensioner, but they brought him back in because of lack of staff or lack of crew. And the difference between us couldn't have been more visible. And it was very cliquey on board. There were Filipinos on board and Russians as well, Russian crew at some point as well. And I felt really, really lonely there. I felt really alone in that point. And then I remember I wasn't really aware of it until a pilot came on board to pilot the ship towards the port. And he said, it's like a prison in here, isn't it? And I thought, yeah, if you say it like that, you can't get off. You don't like it. You miss your family. You can't be yourself. You don't have any connection with other people on board. It couldn't be more lonely. And I think, yeah, that is a bit like a prison. I couldn't be back on board being a seafarer for the life of me. And that's quite sad because you're stuck. You really have to sit it out.
That's an interesting parallel. I mean, I come from a small town in Essex, and everyone knows everyone. And one of the reasons I left and came to London was because I missed the diversity and I missed the hustle and bustle. But now I've been here for 16 years, sort of 15, 16 years nearly. I'm like, I kind of really miss those days where everyone knows everyone and there's a real sense of community because, everyone just is aware of more like what goes on around you. And in London and on big ships, it's just such a machine. You can be swallowed up by it and feel very insignificant and isolated, and it's all too much. So
that's an interesting idea because when I remember feeling almost depressed when I came back from the cruise industry, and I was my own choice to sail the second traineeship I had on a container vessel to compare the differences. And we had 24 crew, I remember. And on the cruise ship, was hundreds. And I felt so isolated all of a sudden. I felt really, really lonely because there was such a big difference between the cruise ship industry and on the container vessel. Well, later, there was probably a better dynamics. You hear better dynamics in a small crew. You have more close knits. If you have a nice crew good banter with each other and you get along with everybody, there's good food is most important.
Yeah.
There was a crew of where the captain locked the ship. It was a small captain owner vessel, and he locked it. And we were in Portugal and in Lisbon, and he just said, "Let's go out." We all go. Just lock the doors. We all go. And he don't do that. This is ridiculous. No. And then that was the least lonely I felt, when we only were with.
You abandoned ship, did you say, basically?
Yeah, we did. But we only were the five of us. He was a captain owner, so he owns the ship, and then he was. Oh right. It was the captain. I was the chief officer. You have a cook / deck, everything. Yeah. And then two crew members. So we were 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. 5. But that was massive. It was really, I felt the least lonely I've ever felt on any of the ships.
With the fewest people.
So, yeah.
Whereas if you take it to the extremes of having thousands of crew, you feel really lonely. But a small, intimate crew size between 5 and 50 or so, then it's you're all one big happy family. But on the extreme scale, if it's you're survivors in a life raft with 2 other people, that's too close in it. That's too intimate. You need a bit more space.
Yeah, that's too intimate for sure.
What's something that from your time at sea stays with you till this day that you cannot shake? Good or bad? Or maybe one example of each.
There's good and bad. And I don't want to make it all towards the negative, but that was one thing that really did stay with me and then changed the way I view my world in the same time, or when you talked about technical and human side and technical side. It was a ro-ro vessel, and 2 weeks after I disembarked, it's capsized in front of the coast of the Netherlands, and it was lost. And the crew was saved, but like I remember, it's a big deal when the ship capsizes or sinks. It's not or get lost. So it stayed with me because I remember the conflict between the Russian chief officer and the Dutch captain, and there was a lot of friction around the differences between them. And I remember the report saying that the chief officer disappeared from view, and you have to come to court and all, and never showed up. He just disappeared, and there was blame on his side. Was laid blame on the communication and all the details. It's not like that important, but it's like I knew because of the friction. And said I knew that the captain told me at that time, we don't speak to him because he doesn't communicate very well, and they couldn't stand each other. They knew each other, and there was a lot of friction at the time. Like I think that from a more professional point of view, I can't agree with that, because you need communication as a key for survival and for safety. Doesn't matter if you can't stand a man or not. But because they were thinking he was such the chief officer, so arrogant and in his own ways and different culture, and he didn't have respect for the captain. I often think about that. What would the human error would be here, and how could have we prevented that? How could I go, for example, see that as what if I would be the coach that been asked to talk to the company? How could I make that captain and that chief officer together in a room? I could have been prevented that situation. I often think that situation could have been prevented. That capsizing of the ship with him was the chief officer was on the duty of the watch at that point. He did not call the captain. That was one of the issues. And I thought, okay, I know why, because there was no communication. That could have been prevented, but how can we deal with that? So I took that issue towards my career, and I bring that with me for that situation, that how it played out in my mind.
So that was one of the negative things that stays with you. What was one of the most positive?
One of the most positive things that stayed with me is the kindness that one of the chief officers offered me when I was a student on board, and I had a really rough time at that point. And there was a new chief officer that came up to me, and he said, "I'm so sorry, it should never have happened to you." And that was one of the psychological safe moments that I opened me up and think I can talk about this. That's okay. It's not about me at all. It shouldn't have happened to me. That somebody believed in me, and after fighting all these months of fighting against the toxic behavior of other people on board, of my mentor on board, somebody have there in my corner and just simple words say, "I'm so sorry, that should never have happened to you. It would never have happened if I was on board." Just kindness, simple kindness. That's all sometimes you need for your survival of mental health. Somebody's on your corner. Just lay a hand on somebody's shoulder and then say, "I'm sorry, it's not right."
Yeah, that's lovely. That's a lovely one to take away from all of it. And to close out, what about a moment at sea that made you laugh so hard you'll never forget?
We had a cruise ship captain, and it's like most of the stories coming from the cruise ship industry, funny enough. And he's world famous around that era. Is an older captain, and we called him Captain Jack. So it's probably for a very good reason. And he was he was Dutch, very well tanned. It was almost like he was like, it was very old. He was already quite older. Be careful what I say. He was a legend in there. He was very, he was definitely a character. And he came onto the bridge, often in his bathrobe, and he started swearing and complaining here and there with his brown tanned skin and very tacky, almost like, and he had a golden Rolex, and he had his suits, his uniforms shortened within his sleeve. sleeve to make sure everybody saw his gold. And then he came on the bridge as an old man with the like Captain Jack, and then he started swearing and with his white bathrobe against his brown tan skin with his golden Rolex. It was ridiculous. I was terrified of the man, you know. I was 20 and I was terrified. And if you think about it now, I think it's one of these characters you make into a sketch, because you have to think of him as a character. It's hilarious. This is like, you don't make that up.
No, but it wasn't necessarily something that happened with him, but the memory of him makes you laugh, right?
The memory of him that we made lots of fun of him. If you ever speak to anybody in 10 years time after that, they will still remember, they sailed with him, they still remember him. Yeah. Captain Jack. But other than that, I'm so sad to say there was not a lot of, I can't remember a really situation that I laughed very hard. Is like laughed a lot. I was very mostly there are sad memories. Unfortunately, there was a lot of camaraderie though, but I had the most worst ever experience of my whole life. I think was on a tugboat. What was I thinking even? I was sailing for an agency and we brought the tugboat. It was the duty not under tug, but bring tugboat from here to Malta. So not from here, from where I was in the Netherlands to Malta. The tugboats were sold. And it was on the Gulf of Biscay and it was Gulf 411. And I do not exaggerate. It's like really the worst storm ever. And I was on the tugboat with the captain who was always permanently drunk. He was an older captain, was all really horrible, swearing, racistic man with an African engineer who was from Gambia. And he was like, the captain was a racist in a bad way. And I was like so scared on board all the time. I got like one of the other crew. Sorry, I have a dog who's going bananas in the background in here. And
you can pick him up.
That storm was the worst I've ever had. It was like we were coming like on a tugboat and on the Gulf of Biscay with both 411 is not fun. And I was really, really seasick for a few days until we reached the place. But then the atmosphere on board was bad. I was scared to go on shore as well because the captain was giving such threats to the Gambian engineer that I was scared they might kill each other or he would kill him. And I didn't report that later. And the one and only crew, deckhand, would tell me that he hated my guts. He said, must be relieved. Because you're a woman, I don't hit women. But if you push my buttons any further, I will just make sure the office knows that you hit a door or something. I will make sure you were never. So there was a lot of threats on board, and I was so kind of that as harassment for sure, but I would never want to experience that again. And I've been offered more money to stay for another extended period of time for another 2 months. And I said, there's no money in the world that can make me stay. And then my replacement heard who would come. And he heard who was on board. He said, I know them. I don't want to go. I don't want to go.
So they had a reputation.
They had a reputation, yeah. And it never even occurred to me to report that in any other way because I was just happy I was
away from it. Yeah, self-preservation at that point.
Yeah.
Just it's done. It's in the past. I'm moving on. I've had that experience. Yeah,
it's done. But yeah, they were never going to talk about it ever again. I have the deepest respect for people on tugboats, fishing vessels, and it's such hard. What I've seen from here is such hard work and. It's a different culture altogether, and I have my deepest respect to sail on those.
Is there anything that you'd like to promote, or how people find your services?
Yeah, if they have any worries in any workplace-related conflicts at all, they can talk to me, and one-to-one or in group setting. But most probably anybody listening and they feel they're in burnout, or they feel like being bullied, or having any issues at all at the workplace that they want to sort out. And it's not just about it's not strong enough, or you're like mental health. We're talking about sexual harassment. but it's like you don't not quite sure it's bullying, or you're unhappy with the situation, or you want to go from ship to shore, things like that. So you can always talk to me and on my website and just have a free chat and reach out to me. And there's a community, there's a network as well that I have. So if I can't help you, there's always somebody there that I can refer you to. Yes, so please do. You don't have to do it alone.
Thank you very much, Tineke. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this afternoon. And I thank you so much for giving us so much of your time. Been wonderful.
No, thank you as well. Thank you. I mean, I could have easily so many questions when I ask you as well, but I'm not doing it. And my dog is like ruining my Easter eggs.
Let's see your dog. Let's get him up on camera for a second. Can you pick him up?
Boy. Yeah, I had Easter eggs that you can fill with something nice for my daughter, but like it's really hard to see. He's like,
is that a spaniel?
Oh, yeah. And he's licking because he's eating plastic Easter eggs.
Oh no!
I think he's fed up.
Is he a black Springer Spaniel?
Yeah, black and white.
Black and white Springer Spaniel. Oh,
yes.
I grew up with spaniels.
See? What's his name? Disappearing. Malky.
Yeah. Good boy.
Malky from Malcolm, short for Malcolm. He's naughty, he's Malcolm.
Yeah. Full title. Malky.
Yeah, he's fed up with me being on a podcast so long because he probably wants a walkies and he's gonna ruin things now. He's eating I think you're choking in a fabric Easter egg and some plastic Easter egg that I've been.
Well, he's not
saving.
He's disappearing not from lack of food, but he's disappearing because the webcam doesn't.
No, this is the fun of having a fake background. It's like so weird, and I'm so happy you don't see the mess that he's leaving me. Trying to ignore it. Trying to ignore his. If you have any tips from working with Spaniel, he's new. I'm new to this. He's only with us for a month.
Oh, he's not your full-time dog.
Yeah, he is. But we just got. He's a puppy, so we just got him. Oh, he's a puppy.
Oh, yeah. That's the best time. Oh. Thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best.
No, thank you. Thank you for all that time take with me, and I hope it comes across all right. I feel like I'm floating with that. I think I'm wearing the wrong color for the wrong background, but too late now.
I say goodbye. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks so much for coming on. We could talk for so much longer. I know this has gone on many different tangents, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being a guest today, and I wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you. Same. I wish you all the best too, and I can't wait to see more of your podcasts.
Thank you so much. Take care, my dear. Have a lovely evening, afternoon.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. So there you have it. That wraps it up for this episode of Deck Tales. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've been entertained by the tales of laughter, camaraderie, and the occasional stormy sea, then don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. There are lots of other shows out there to compete with, so if you are enjoying Deck Tales, why not help us out by going over to Spotify or Apple and dropping us a 5-star rating? This will boost the show's visibility and help to attract new listeners every week. Before I sign off, if you'd like to share your own stories for future episodes, then I'd love to hear from you. Simply get in touch over the socials, because after all, the best stories often come from our listeners. As we navigate through the waters of life, remember to enjoy the journey as much as the destination, as well as those you choose to share the adventure with. I've been your Captain Sammy Catlin. Until next time, fair winds, smooth sailing, and may your adventures be as unforgettable as those shared here on Deck Tales. Bon voyage!